is the second part of the video, so it must be Sunday. We're going to continue getting all the bits and pieces ready to get the rolling chassis together and finish everything off. Got quite a lot achieved this time, but don't forget, most people still watching without subscribing. Please subscribe, press the bell notifications, leave me any comments, good or bad, like the video, don't like the video, please do all that, vote in the polls, and let's get on with some work. Only just got the other fork leg built up and I got stopped again. It's just been one of them weeks, but it has been a week since I sprayed the engine, so look at that. That is now painted, and this is beautiful. This is like glass. That paint has gone on so well. So I've now got to leave that for 7 days, well another 6 now, to dry, and then I can get all the masking tape off, put some of the electrical leads back on, and put the starter motor back on, bits and bobs, and then we're ready. Oh, I've got to do the headset bearings, and then ready to start to put the frame on. But back to the forks. The damper rods are in, and I've Loctited them up using my special brush tool. All the seals are in, all the bits and bobs are in. So what you do now is you push the fork tube all the way to the bottom, and then you fill with oil. Now this is where Haynes manual's good, because it tells you how much oil, and I have got to put in 467 cc's, but you can also measure it, and it needs to be 120 millimeters down. So I've put a bit of tape on so that I can fill it up and sort of eye it, get it somewhere near, and then I will use the rule and make sure it's at the right level. I'll put it on there. But also, one of the good things about the Haynes manual is it tells you the wear for your springs. So for this spring, relaxed, it should be 310.8. Well, that is 310, possibly in a little bit. If that relaxed gets shorter than 304.5, it's scrap. So that's always worth knowing. You know your springs have gone. So don't put springs in yet. So I will fill this up now with oil. As soon as I put that on there, since I've been looking after it, so you can see my tape. I've got my oil. So I know that I need less than 500 mils, so I've got 1 litre of oil, 10 weight oil, and now I should just fill that up. Right, and now I can look in the end and at the tape, and I can see that I'm not anywhere near. That might be a bit much. No, little bit. Or if I put that in to 200, that should be at 80. That is spot on. So now if you listen, that's not too bad. You can hear it. You have to lift it and drop it to get all the air out, and then check it again. That's actually dropped. That's it. So I've kept all my bits and pieces separate. So spring in right way round, tight pulse at the bottom. Remember it's full of oil, so spring, little spacer, which obviously falls on its side, tube thing, so you pull that out, and then check your O-ring to make sure your O-ring isn't worn. These aren't bad. And then this is the bit obviously where it can decide to fire off, because you've got to pull it in and get that started. Just a bit of a pain.
not a massive tension on it. I can't get it. But watch, because it might only be on 1 or 2 threads. Well, I should have had my socket ready to go, because obviously I won't have the right. But you be careful, because that may only be on 1 or 2 threads. Right, then just leave that hand tight, and remember that you've got to nip this up once you get it into the triple clamps. So that's that one done. It's just the same thing again now. So all the way in, oil. Can you hear that air? Pump it. Try not to squirt yourself in the face with oil. I need 120 millimeters, so I'll put it into 150 and I should see 30 millimeters of oil on, like a dipstick. A bit more. So 150. There you go. That's too much. There's a little bit too much in there. That's it. Spring, washer, spacer tube. Make sure it's on. And there. Just keep an eye on where you put your copper washers in, that it's not leaking and you're not getting any oil out of there. So that is them done. Headset bearings. These are all been, I smoothed all them off. They've come out really nice. These are the original headset bearings. These are ball bearings, because obviously the edge of the. But what we're doing is new dust seals, but I'm going to replace the ball bearings with tapered roller bearings, which are just better. They take more load. Dust seal and bearing, that goes on there, and I've got a piece of, it's just plastic 32mm tube, and that fits perfectly on the race. I can use that to tap it on. You could warm your bearing up slightly in the oven, help it go on. These weren't particularly tight coming off. Some grease on the inner. I'm not going to grease up the outer yet, just so it doesn't get everywhere. Because that's cut nice and square. That on there, which is just sitting on the inner race, and that should tap that down. A piece of steel tube would have been a lot better. It was a bit bouncy, especially trying not to damage the powder coat, so having it on the bubble wrap. But I tapped it down till it was just about there. It's just nipped that dust seal. Probably. So what I'll do is, to give it a final tap, I've got a pin punch, and I'll very carefully, which fits inside that race, very carefully just make sure that's fully seated home, and that is solid. So next thing is headset bearing, outer race, out of there and out of there. Ideally you'd have a brass dolly, you know, a brass piece of brass, but I haven't got one. But I have got a bit of steel tube. I'll do the top one first. So that's the top one out, literally that easy. And then the bottom one, and there's the bottom one out. Back in, top one in. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can start one off at the top and one off at the bottom, and get a big washer that covers it. It's a threaded bar, and draw it in like that with a couple of pieces of threaded bar. Or you could have a popper bearing pusher. I haven't got either, so what I'm going to have to do is carefully tap it in with a piece of wood, and then maybe use my pin punch. Don't know. I'm sure I've got some threaded bar somewhere. I can't remember where it is. In a safe place. So I'll start them off. Bit of grease on the outside again, just to help it on its way. I've actually put these the opposite way around. Put these in the freezer to shrink them down a little bit. But as you saw, they're not that tight. So try and make sure it stays square. As you can see, I'm hardly hitting that. I've got no weight on there. That's got about 3 millimeters to go. What I'll do now is, got them started. That top one's nearly home. Bottom one needs a bit more. What I'll do now is find the thread bar, two nuts, big washers, draw them in. But I've got to find it. It's in here somewhere. After much messing about, I have eventually found some threaded bar, and it is only just long enough. So let me show you. Big washer, nut, big washer, nut, and I'll tighten that up and it should draw it in. Now you can hear that going. So those are in. I will be honest, I couldn't get enough pull to finish them off, so I was happy. So I used my pin punch and just went round the edge just to make sure they were fully seated. The danger of using the pin punch is you could chip the bearing. You could chip a chunk out of it. That's why you use a brass dolly if you're going to hit bearings. So the bearing's a lot harder than the brass, it just takes a chip off the brass. But if you go around very carefully, but I can't recommend doing that. If that's what you want to do, it's up to you. But the other thing is, if you're going to be hitting bearings with hard steel, you should really wear some safety glasses, because if you do chip a piece off, it hits you in the eye. So there you go, safety lecture. Now I can put the triple clamp, triple tree, whatever you want to call it, back in. So need some grease on there. I will pack that full of grease. If you're in the UK, you'll know that the weather has been crazy. It's just coming up on the Easter weekend, and we've had record 50-year, highest in 50-year temperatures, and they're talking about on Easter Monday possibly snow. So pack that full of grease, roll it round. There's only one real way to do it. Get your fingers in, get as much grease in as you can. We can always clean it up later, but more grease is good. When will you strip it down and re-grease it? I don't think anybody ever does. So you don't have to be as messy as me. So that's that one. And what I will do now is pack the top one as well. Top bearing in, bottom yoke, dust seal, cover thing. I'm sure all these things have a proper name. And then there is the spacer washer. All these things have a tightening torque. I haven't got anything that can do the proper torque, so I'll have a look in the manual. I'll come up with the best I can. Usually you just do it by feel. Don't want any slack, don't want it too tight. You know, move it around on the grease a bit, let it all bed in, and then check it. But that's okay to build forks back up. Okay, that's it for this time. I think we're just about done. I've got a few little bits and pieces, putting hoses and cables and things on that don't need important. Something that's came up, I've put in the studs, and I've gone for stainless studs. So those are in, but I have found out, and I didn't know this, that stainless and aluminium can have a reaction if you use copper slip. I've always used copper slip, but now apparently the thinking is you don't use any sort of copper where
alloys or aluminiums are involved, especially with stainless steel. So I got some aluminium anti-seize just off Amazon, and so I've put the studs in with that, and every time I'll be putting anything into an engine casing or into aluminium, I'll be using that instead of copper slip. So learn something new every day. Got to put the water pump, starter motor back on, a couple of little bits to put on, you don't really need to see, and then next time we are starting to turn a corner, I will be building up the rolling chassis, frame onto the engine, forks on, swinging arm on, wheels in, old suspension, all ready so we can start moving the bike around again. And from there on, it should be really reassembling the bike. There's obviously other things still to do, so from next week hopefully everything will be going in a forward direction and not a backwards direction. Hopefully I'll have had a haircut because the barbers are all opening. Don't forget to vote in the poll, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next Wednesday.